Hey, this is going to be a TNA Impact review for the 21st of May. And this was not a good show. This was pretty bad, really. It was kind of a curious show because the wrestling was actually pretty decent. The segments were even okay. I think the Angelina Love Awesome Kong segment was really good. But there was just one segment / match, the Mick Foley versus Rocky Balboa thing, which was just so horrific that it just undermined everything about this episode of Impact. And this episode just really didn't do its job. Its job was clearly to sell the Sacrifice pay-per-view. That's the job of the last show before pay-per-view, and no one would buy Sacrifice off the back of this because all they'll remember is that Mick Foley Rocky Balboa thing, which is all I can remember. TNA just totally shot themselves in the foot with that. There are a lot of easy comparisons to be made between this episode of Impact and the last episode of SmackDown before Judgment Day. They were both trying to sell a pay-per-view, and they both contained run-in finishes at the end with everyone running in and just brawling, basically. But SmackDown managed to do theirs in such a way which was just so good, so exciting, so vibrant. It just made you want to know who wins the matches at Judgment Day. Whereas TNA just managed to do it in such a boring, plodding, predictable way. You just know Kurt Angle's going to run it, you know Sting's going to run it. And they also just they just made it absolutely clear who are the candidates to win at Sacrifice. Either Mick Foley wins or Jeff Jarrett wins. And further than that, either Mick Foley gets pinned or Jeff Jarrett gets pinned. Kurt Angle and Sting are not going to feature in the decision at Sacrifice. I'd place money on that. So yeah, I just don't think it really did a very good job of selling the pay-per-view. It also managed to do a curious thing, right? Because last week before I watched Impact, I really didn't like the Mick Foley, Jeff Jarrett angle. Then I watched Impact and I really liked it. This week, I still had those feelings of thinking, this is a good angle, I like this. Watch this episode of Impact, now I don't like it again. How did they manage to do that? In 2 hours of a show, like 1.5 hours of filming, how did they manage to make me like it and then not like it again? But anyway, I digress, as usual. Okay, we start off with Jeff Jarrett coming to the ring to deliver a promo, quite a predictable promo, basically what I was expecting after last week, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think this is the correct way to go with this. Jarrett comes to the ring, and one of the first things he says is, "I don't have much to say," which is kind of ironic because this promo is going to last at least 10 minutes, probably 12 to 15. Then he says Mick Foley's been causing more chaos than the Main Event Mafia recently, which is true. And is very, very, very sad. The Main Event Mafia are basically just bit part players now who just go round the back in comedy skits, basically, trying to get money off Jenna Maraska. Why? They're already rich. What are they trying to do? Buy arms? It's ridiculous. Who cares? But then, Jeff Jarrett says that basically it's his fault Mick Foley's been causing trouble in TNA, so he's going to stop it by entering himself in the match at Sacrifice for the TNA World Heavyweight title. Mick Foley comes out and says, "What are you going to sacrifice at Sacrifice?" And Jeff Jarrett predictably and again correctly says his voting shares, which is all fine. It was a bit blah, but whatever. Then Mick Foley comes to the ring and says, "Okay, Jeff, you want to book matches? Well, I'm going to book some matches too. Tonight I'm going to book a match between you and Samoa Joe. I'm going to book a match between Kurt Angle and Matt Morgan. I'm going to book a match between Sting and Eric Young. Basically a tune-up for his 3 opponents at Sacrifice. But not to be unfair, he's going to book a match between himself and a former World Heavyweight Champion who's never wrestled a match in TNA. Which, turned out to be a cardboard cutout of Rocky. Oh dear. Anyway, then we have the predictable bit where we go backstage to see the Main Event Mafia, and it's just Kurt Angle looking for Sting to make sure Sting knows his role at Sacrifice. This is a little theme throughout the night. Eventually he finds Sting, and they both say how they were screwed over at Lockdown, and they agree to work together in the match at Sacrifice. Then we have Lauren interviewing. Lauren gets a lot of airtime, like loads. I mean, she just gets to interview so many people during one episode of Impact. But she's interviewing Suicide and Daniels. Because Daniels helped Suicide last week, he's agreed to give Daniels an X Division title shot at Sacrifice. I thought Daniels was actually a little bit better than the X Division title now, but you know, whatever. They both deliver unmemorable promos. Then we have the first match of the night, which was actually really quite good. Lethal Consequences versus the Motor City Machine Guns versus Christopher Daniels, or sorry, just Daniels and Suicide. This was a pretty good match. Basically, the storyline in the match was that Daniels gets dominated for the majority of the time. The Motor City Machine Guns looked really good. All the double team moves they were doing, you were just like, why are these guys not tag team champions? And more than that, why do they always have to take the pin in these matches? It's always either Shelley or Sabin who gets pinned. It's never Jay Lethal. It's never Consequences Creed. But anyway, yeah. Basically, Daniels gets dominated, Suicide gets the hot tag, and then it breaks down into a bit of a sort of entertaining spot fest. Sabin hits a beautiful springboard top rope tornado DDT, which was just awesome. And then Daniels also hits the split-legged moonsault to the outside. Match ends when Suicide hits that new finisher of his. Don't know why he's doing it. He already has two finishers, but and also the crowd don't seem to recognize it as a finisher. I mean, I can see that it hurts, but it still doesn't even look like a finisher to me. It's just sort of like a code breaker without the the sort of impact for me. He just falls backwards from the second rope with their head on his knees, and of course Shelley takes the pin. What a surprise. Then we have a rather hilarious Booker T and Kevin Nash training session. I think the most hilarious thing about it is that Kevin Nash actually, there's a suggestion that he actually trains, which I don't think is very likely given the state of his, well, given the fact it takes him 4 minutes to walk to the ring. Then we have a Team 3D promo. They come out and they talk about the British invasion. They say, we know you're trying to make a name for yourselves, but you're doing it against the wrong guys. They say, you've got no class, even Beer Money has class. What is with this, they turn Beer Money heel again by having them attack Balls Mahoney and Spike Dudley. And now they've just turned them face again, everyone's just ignoring that, okay? Surely Team 3D would still hate Beer Money, but whatever. The British invasion come out and attack Team 3D. Beer Money comes in and makes the save, and they just say they're going to beat the British invasion at Sacrifice, and then they're going to beat Team 3D for the titles. Just a very boring segment. Then we had Jeff Jarrett and Eric Young. Eric Young's annoyed that he's in this match, which didn't really make sense because he's been wanting an opportunity, but the commentators clarify it's because he doesn't want to fight Sting, who is somewhat of a mentor for him. Jeff Jarrett just tells him to go out there and be a man, and Eric Young says in a rather childlike way, you'll regret this. And then we have Eric Young versus Sting. This is an okay match. This was kind of dull, to be honest. It wasn't a very interesting match by any stretch of the imagination. I actually can't think of anything that happened in it except for the ending. Eric Young goes for a top... Eric Young looked pretty decent as usual. Eric Young goes for a top rope missile drop kick, and Sting turns it into the Scorpion Deathlock. Eric Young taps out, and they have a show of respect after the match, I believe. Then we have a little segment, Jeremy Borash and Mick Foley talking in Foley's dressing room. They're trying to do this. They really seem to think that Mick Foley and Jeremy Borash have lots of chemistry, which is not true. They're trying to do like the Credgley thing they did in WWE. For those of you who don't know, that's Christian Edge and Mick Foley, who just did lots of like jokes backstage. But they already had the right people for that. When Foley did the promo of the Motor City Machine Guns a few weeks ago, that was hilarious. They should stick to that. Forget JB, he's rubbish. Anyway, turn over to part 2.